Hey, this is sorry, I had another tab. I got a pop-up notification, which I don't usually get. Hey, this is Misery Loves Company, a weekly reading series hosted by miserytourism.com. Every Friday we welcome outside Mr. Bones will not stop screaming. Every Friday we welcome Mr. Bones to scream his fucking head. Okay. We welcome outsider and transgressive writers to share their work. I am so rattled now. Anyway, that's what we do every week. People come, they share their work. That's the fucking deal, right? Oops. So with that in mind, Blick, you're up first tonight.
I was really upset to miss Saturday night, but I took that second hit and I was fucked up for like a day afterwards. So there's no way that I could have made it.
Oh,
But I know I missed something special. I know I missed it special.
I get the impression Manny's probably going to do some readings next year once the weather changes. So maybe I'll.
Well, I went to the one that Unity performed in, and it was awesome, you know. But that's the only one I went with. I would have definitely, would have definitely liked to go Saturday. I like the clips I saw. Gabe, you reading in the dark. That was sitting that reading that was great. That was.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it was a really good good memories to make.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I really like that. All right, I'm gonna read two small pieces that were published last week or the week before. One's about religion, the other's about romance. I guess I'll read the religion one first from Bear Creek Gazette. It's an excerpt from my book, Dream Streams. This is the piece. And my ego was just flattered. I found out that it went from to publish it went from $17.99 to $4.99. So I'm glad Bear Creek resurrected it. So this is called 6 Pounds of Sin. My first exposure to personal injustice occurred at my baptism. My godfather, Uncle Nicky, held me over the baptismal font just as a priest was about to anoint me with holy water. Uncle Nicky exploded a fart. The startled priest dropped his cup of christening water as my uncle immediately blamed me for his flatulence. Nicky held me at arm's length, turning his head and scrunching his face as family members recoiled from a stench so severe, even the non-religious could believe in the devil. My godfather handed me over to my mother and insisted she change my diaper. Many pinched nerves nodded agreement. She quickly exited the sacristy, but to her surprise found my diaper empty. When we returned, I felt exonerated, vindicated. Yet mother chose to remain silent. I shall never forget the indignant eyes of the priest looking down at me with apprehension and disgust, while he moistened my forehead with salvation amid the giggles of family and friends. And that's maybe you have it up there, but that's the picture I love. That inspired that. All right, that's religion. Okay, so this is romance. I'm sorry Gigi's not here because I know how much he likes to see nudity. And so this is...
He actually just joined the room.
Oh, did he? Oh, okay.
Felt it. It must have been like a premonition.
Okay. This is from Conjuncture, and it's based on a painting I really love from this Massachusetts artist Beverly Ripple called Moonscape. All right. This is Secondhand Rose Ablution. The captain's dead, but hard to forget. He has to be dead. Nobody's liver could survive all those years of poisoning. That's the word he used, poison. Never drinking or booze or alcoholism. It was poison that ruined his life. The captain was a romantic. So was I. Years ago, I tended bar in a Fleabag dump called the Secondhand Rose. I wanted to experience life and write about it, so I dropped out of Rutgers for 3 semesters and poured the vinegar that my boss called wine into small cups for customers like the captain and his mates. Mates. That's the word he used for the sour-smelling people he drank with. The captain was different, though. He had enough pride not to make excuses unless he thought they'd be believed. When the captain spoke, he nearly always made sense. Last week, I found a sealed letter the captain gave me. I was supposed to deliver it to a woman customer who came into the Rose every Tuesday night. Joey stayed for about an hour and sat at a table by herself, never saying a word. She told me she liked scotch, and that was the only time I ever heard her speak. But we communicated. She sipped scotch until her glass was empty, and then she'd nod in my direction, and I'd bring her another one. I never knew her name, but then I didn't know the captain's name either until I opened his letter. One day, she just stopped showing up, so I wasn't able to give it to her. I tucked it in the vest pocket where it lay crumbled for years. How many years? I'm not sure. There's no date on it. Here's the letter. Dear Miss, I give this note to Big Bob to give to you because I know Big Bob's going to be tending bar Tuesday nights. You ain't been here in weeks. For a year now, you've been real important to me. Now you ain't here no more. Please come back. I'm ready for you, miss. To meet you, I mean. The secondhand Rose ain't the same place anymore. Your perfume's gone, and our piss and farts is all you smell on Tuesday nights. Even Big Bob said so. I miss you very much. Hello, miss. My name's Eddie, but friends call me the captain. I ain't a real captain or nothing. I mean, I'm sort of a captain. I'm the floor guy and the scrambler at Coney Island. I mean, I used to be. I'm the guy at the bar with the sailor hat on. To be honest with you, miss, I wear the hat all the time because of my bald spot. It ain't that big, you know. You look real pretty, miss. I mean, there ain't been no lady in roses looking like you in years. Not by herself anyway. Not alone. I hope you ain't sad or nothing. I ain't sad. Being a little scared don't count, right, miss? You like music? I'm a musician. Play harmonica. Grandfather taught me when I was a kid. I'm what you call a street musician. Mostly old Italian songs. I play across the street from SBQR in Little Italy. Ever been there? The Arabs in the kitchen treat me real good. On Saturday night when it's warm, there's a lot of bucks to be had. You got to come back to Roses, miss. I've blown too many chances. You can't take my Tuesday nights away like that. You can't, miss. You're making me scared. I know you don't like talking to people, miss. You don't like being bothered. Me too. Big Bob will give you this. Sort of like a letter of introduction, right, miss? You got to show, miss. Please, I'm the captain, the guy in the sailor hat at the bar. Or you can call me Eddie. I want to see you smile, miss. You don't drink that much. I mean, you're never blitzed after your hour on Tuesday night. I respect that in a woman. You got all your teeth, so I know you ain't a tramp or nothing. You're a lady, miss, a real lady, and you ain't fat at all. Forgive me, miss, but you're real important to me. You make me feel like a man again. You know what I mean? Last year, before you started showing up Tuesday nights, I sort of let myself go. You know, relax myself. I dream about you, miss. I ain't dreamed about a woman in 3 years since that fake redhead jerked me off behind the control booth at Coney. She didn't like me enough and just wanted a free reride. I got to be honest with you, miss. I ain't much. I'll tell you a story that might help you figure out who I am. It's something my brother told me. He said I was the type of guy that sits in his room masturbating and thinks it's an explosion. I ain't exactly sure what he means, but it sounds truthful. I don't know if you noticed, miss, but I've been cleaning myself a bit each Tuesday night. I seen you looking over at me, but I don't think you seen me. You got to come back to Roses, miss. I'm starting not to like myself again. You make me feel like a man, miss. No disrespect, miss, but my prick feels alive. I mean, it kind of sings to me now. I forgot about that. You know, after a while, I just pissed all that stinking juice I drank. I dream about you, miss. I dream I see you with nothing on. You're a beautiful woman, miss. You got to return to your table at Roses. You gotta. I ain't dreamed about you in 2 weeks. I need that dream, miss. I need to dream about me rubbing my nose against your belly and you laughing and smiling. I never seen you smile. Miss, listen, miss. I don't want this note to make you nervous or something. You don't got to see me if you don't want. Not right away, anyway. Things take time sometimes. But give me back my Tuesday nights, okay, miss? Sit down at your table and have some drinks. I'll spring for some. I won't spin around and stare at you. I like watching the mirror over the bar. Lots of times I got to tell Big Bob to move the hell out of the way because he blocks my view. Miss, please, please come back. Tuesday night, I left Roses with pee stains on my pants. That don't happen when you're here. I'm real careful, miss. Thank you for reading this note. I miss you, miss. That's sort of funny, ain't it, Miss? Missing you, Miss. I want to make you laugh. Best wishes, the captain, Eddie. All right. Thanks.
Those were wonderful, Dick. The pea stains line just slew me. Like the small, just the idea that that would be a compliment. And of course it is. It's like the most sincere compliment this guy could possibly have given, you know, that he doesn't piss himself when she's around. But oh my God, I just love in both of these pieces, like the crass sincerity of them, you know, that sense of like, not just that like these pieces are like simply like funny and crass and kind of, you know, but like the way that they're crass in a way that's like really like beautiful and sincere, right?
Let me tell you a story about this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
About this one, all right? Okay. You know, this is an older story. You know, it's sort of, yeah. This is an old story. It's a different incarnation, but it was called Dear Miss. And when I wrote this, I sent it out, and I must have gotten, I don't know, close to 40 rejection on it, and so many people labeled me a misogynist. David Byrne had a publishing company back then, and I even sent it to him because I had friends of his and stuff, and they were just ripping me apart. I saw it as a love story, you know. So finally, I sent it to the Los Angeles Review, and I didn't know that was run by Wrenhead Press out in California. Gabe, you probably know them, right? Wrenhead Press.
No,
Yeah. Okay. Well, they're one of the top indie presses, and the editor was a woman, accepted it, and I like the idea that a woman got it because everybody was telling me it was such a misogynist piece, you know. So to make a long story short, as a result of that story, it ended up that story was rejected like nearly 40 times, and I was being ripped apart for it. I got a short story collection from Wrenhead Press out of it. It snowballed into that. So, you know, the thing is, when everybody was telling me that it was just horrible, and I just saw it as a simple, beautiful, unusual, you know, maybe unusual. Some people who aren't in that environment love story. So I just fuck what people say, and just, you know, if you believe in something, just keep sending it out. Like, yeah, this group is transgressives and outsiders and all that. You know, I don't know what the hell that means, you know. I mean, just write stories. Nobody here tries to shock. You got some great writers. Everything in here is so inspiring. But I don't know what that label transgressive and outsider is. You're just telling stories. You're telling like really good, good stories, you know.
You know, it's funny because Gabe, you and I and Derek had a conversation like about that transgressive label, I think, when we were in New York City. And honestly, sorry, just one second. Mr. Bones says, I'll be right.
United forever in friendship and labor, our mighty republics will ever endure. The great Soviet Union will live.
Oh my God, he waited. He waited.
That's what respect. That was such respect. I feel so respected, you know.
That was. I was just about to jump in and say something, but man, the intermission. Yeah.
He respects his elders, you know. That's sweet. They're very sweet. Yeah.
Oh my God. Anyway, what I was about to say, you know, the way I see the like transgressive label is it's not about like, it's not to be worn as like a badge of honor or as like this like thing to aspire to. I just see it as a label you take on to give yourself permission to write whatever the fuck you want to write. Right? Like it's basically a way of saying we don't have to answer for the content of the work that we publish, at least not in terms of like, we don't have to provide a moral justification for the work that we publish. But I do think there are people out there who wear the transgressive thing as like they're out trying to shock, and they
Yeah,
think
that,
like,
yeah, that's that, yeah.
yeah.
That's what bothers me
Their
about it, yeah.
interests of kind of like makes their work superior or whatever. Like we've actually published some downright wholesome shit on misery tourism, and we're not, you know, and when we do publish shit that's like shocking or subversive or transgressive, in my mind, usually like there's a joke there, right? There's usually a punchline, or there has to be some sense of humor to the piece, or there has to be like, it has to be subversive on the level of ideas. Like I'm really not interested in shit that's just like, you know, like rape and gore or whatever, you know, like that kind of stuff. But
I've never seen anything on here or read. I bought like Gabe's books, and you know, I never saw anything in here that was shocking. It's just fucking good. So I didn't know, you know, I don't know if is there a category now like of transgressive literature somewhere in a library or in a bookstore or something, or is that just?
yeah, no, not really. I mean, it's a label that gets applied, but I guess if you want to talk about like historically, you're talking about people like Kathy Acker, Samuel Delaney, and even like on the other side of things, like Anthony Burgess and Nabokov, right? Like, and that's a pretty big tent if you think about literary styles, right? Like Acker, excuse me, is very different than Delaney, is very different than certainly Anthony Burgess, who was a very conservative writer, actually. But but for me, it's just like a way to craft that big tent that's ironically very inclusive, right? And the only like real people that are kept on the outside of the tent are people who would like to censor your work, you know, who want to like constrict or constrain the artistic process. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Okay.
I think different people view the transgressive label different ways, but it's sorry, we're kind of. I guess I'll get back to the other readings, but it's also why I like the outsider labeled mark too than the transgressive label, to be honest. But yeah, no, Blake, that was fucking awesome, and I agree with you. It's very much like this seems like such a sincere and loving story. I can't imagine anyone seeing it as a misogynistic work. If anyone looks bad in this, it's the narrator, right? If anyone seems a little bit like an oaf, it's him. And even he comes off as kind of charming and sincere. So I don't get it. But thank you so much for sharing that piece. Keith is up next.
Okay, thank you, William.
Now,
So
this is a piece that Keith actually read at the last Misery Loves Company after the camera wasn't rolling anymore. And I was like, man, you need to read this so we can get it on the record. So anyway, it's all yours.
well, I appreciate the chance to share it again. And it was a story that I wrote about around Halloween a couple of weeks ago, because this year was a special time of year, and I just sat down and penned this story. It's titled Chapter 1, Thank You. When he woke up on that Monday morning, he could feel the excitement. This was the week. They were enjoying their morning coffee when he looked over at her and said, "This is it. Friday night is my 1-year anniversary of Misery Loves Company. And with the Atlanta Braves and Georgia Bulldogs, this is going to be a very busy week." Immediately, he knew that he had misspoken. He should not have prefaced Braves and Bulldogs with Atlanta and Georgia. He never used those geographic adjectives in his speech. Why did he even say that? Why didn't he just say Braves and Dogs? He could feel insecurity and paranoia spreading through his body. He knew what she was thinking. Here he goes again. He's writing another story in his head, and he's testing me. Why on earth would he say Atlanta and Georgia if he wasn't trying to create a setting for his readers, who very likely aren't even sports fans? He's just fishing for an opinion. He had to deflect back to the anniversary. This conversation was not to be about the new story he was writing. How could she know anything about that story? He had slipped up. He had to think quickly. something that rarely happened in conversations with his wife. Can you believe it? Friday is my 1-year anniversary of book club, he proudly crowed, only this time louder, hoping to redirect her focus. Expecting an excited expression, he saw nothing in her look, blankness as she just sipped her coffee. He wasn't surprised. She and everyone else knew all about his Friday night book club. In the beginning, he didn't start out calling it book club. He would tell everyone that he was going to be on a Zoom call that was a weekly social reading series that hosts transgressive and outsider authors and artists. To be consistent and clear, he even memorized and quoted Williams' exact opening lines until he realized that it was so much easier to just say, I'm going to my book club. Everyone understood that. Oprah had invented book clubs years ago. He didn't have to explain words and technology that no one really understood, which admittedly, he didn't even know or understand a year ago himself. So he just hijacked the name from Oprah, book club. But just to be honest, after he learned the ropes and before he became kinder and gentler, he would occasionally use Williams' verbiage for fun, just to see the look on people's faces. It's the same exact look that he gets when he mentions that he's on Twitter. Age doesn't matter. 8 to 80, the look is the same. Oh, she said, yeah, book club. I heard you reading the other night. Oh, no. Trying not to sound anxious, just curious, he quietly asked, did you hear what I was saying? He knew that he had not shared the story that he read last week, because if he did, the Inquisition would begin. When did you write that? How long did it take? What else did you do today? Why are you writing these stories? And what's up with those poems? Aren't poems supposed to rhyme? And that would just be the opening questions. Over time, he had learned to be very judicious about talking about his writing. For some reason, it made everyone uncomfortable. His writing was too surprising to everyone, and sometimes even himself. No one had ever dreamed that he would even attempt to write poems and short stories. Just knowing what books he read was enough of a shock to everyone. And heaven forbid, never ask him anything about Henry Miller. Everyone had learned that lesson. But in his defense, he had told her about writing the story that he had read last Friday. On the day that he penned his story, Headbang, he very quietly, under his breath, mentioned it to her, but he knew she wasn't listening. She woke up when he said something about song lyrics from AJR's Bang. So he obtained her consent and showed her the YouTube video of Bang, which she watched and really liked. He knew her well enough that she would like Bang. Afterwards, she said, of course I know that song. Everybody knows it. Well, mostly everybody. He recognized the look that she gave him. He didn't say anything. Thankfully, but not surprisingly, she didn't ask to see his story. Timidly, he asked again, but did you hear what I was saying? This time she answered, no, I couldn't make out the words. I could only hear that voice coming through the wall. He decided not to pursue that avenue of discussion any further, knowing full well where that one-sided conversation would go. It wouldn't be the first time she and everybody else talked about his voice and his South Georgia accent. But thankfully, since she didn't hear the words of his story, he begins to feel much better. And so there it was, another validation of the first rule of writing that he learned this year. Your family and most of your friends don't want to read your writing or hear you read your story. Only consider sharing it if they beg, and then be extra careful. Remember, it is essential that they beg for it. Parenthetical. Of course, this doesn't apply to Twitter friends. They love to hear your stories and poems. His wife had finished her coffee and now was leaving to go spend her day with 7-year-olds. In the evening, he could tell her more about his 1-year anniversary with Misery Loves Company. It's a story that's ultimately a thank you story, a story of gratitude coupled with another story that began when he reinvented himself. Definitely not reinvention in the beginning, but rather the discovery of a new person. Now he was associating with others who had long since discovered themselves and their craft, and they were sharing their stories and polishing their work, and how talented they were. He was just a guest in their home. It was a very intimidating new situation, one that felt exciting and different, even though he was only a listener, a guest. He most definitely was not a writer. And heaven forbid, if he ever should write something, he could never, ever be a reader. He was way out of his league. So he decided to just sit back, listen, enjoy the ride, and see where it took him. He sensed that new worlds would be discovered, and he could tell from that very first night that this was a kind, accepting, and positive community. The host set the perfect example, and everyone followed. And what a great night for his first time. An inaugural Halloween-themed reading that was performance art at its finest. What had he discovered? Wow, this was going to be a great way to live through the dying days of the pandemic. Let the readings and storytelling begin.
Keith, I know I said this when you read this last time, but that it's so hilarious, so heartfelt, and I really do appreciate you reading that.
And I appreciate what all you and Rudy and the whole gang of readers and everybody does. I really do.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful to have you here, Keith, and it's wonderful that like the whole community that's grown up around these readings is just Blick, I think, said in the chat that this is a loving tale of Thanksgiving. And I think that like when I asked you to read it again, I didn't realize how close it would be to Thanksgiving, but like really, I am sincerely like thankful for the entire fucking community that's grown up around these readings. And thank you, Keith. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thanks, William.
Gigi is up next. Gigi Rowland, are you with us, Gigi?
Yeah, apologies. I don't have anything funny tonight. It's just kind of depressing shit, but that's what I got.
Thanksgiving, what else could it be?
Yeah, I guess. So these are just 3 poems. They're pretty quick, so I'll just read them and then we can keep moving here. This first one's called Your Young Culture. Hardware is flexible. Some software could almost be called hacking. Sometimes it is a hacking. This is also hacked. The pile mushes into the other pile. These piles are rearranged, resprayed, remolded into the other thing. Maybe unrecognizable, but beautiful this time. Spun around, well lit, nearly giving off light, lovely on all sides from all possible angles, all possible positions. Next one's called Elbow Lick. Every woman who has touched my belly button with theirs has expressed joking frustration at the texture of my skin. I'm too soft overall, physically. I'm bubblegum stretched over some bones. Instead of connections, these joints always hurt. I wake up to spend the rest of the day slowly collapsing, ligaments soft, head sagged like the couch cushion, farted into for at least 2 generations. Ideally, I could live my life as a signpost, something sturdy. This last one's called Tape to the Toilet. Balsa wood legs tick in the sand. Waves keep coming in, rot, imbalance, salt water, good in small portions. I'm good at rationing. I promise I'm sorry. I'm so very sorry. That's all I got.
Wow, those were tremendous, Gigi. I've said this before about your poetry, but usually when I say it, I'm talking about like humorous poetry. You have such a remarkable like precision and efficiency with language. Like there are so many just indelible images, in just the few lines of these poems. Like the bubble gum line. I want to read it. I am bubble gum stretched over some bones. Like, God damn. Like, do I know that feeling? I don't. And like the physicality of these poems, the way that you capture like human frailty, and I don't know, maybe it's just those like seasonal affective disorder feels or whatever, but these poems are basically exactly how I've been feeling physically for the last month and a half. Just that sense that every movement like creaks and every molecule just isn't calibrated right. You capture it perfectly and beautifully here, GG.
That's my day to day, so yeah, I know it.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
Jesse is up next.
Yes. I wanted to say, to kind of follow on something Keith said, I had heard somebody on Twitter, I don't remember who said this, but they said they were going to publish a book, and they said, it was a woman, and she said, I want everybody to buy my book, but I don't want anybody that I know to read it or talk to me about it ever. And I thought that was a real insight into, how it feels, because I know certainly I write things that I wouldn't want my family members to read or anything like that. This thing that I'm going to read tonight is a piece of the spy novel that I've been working on for a while, and it's actually coming along. It's called Weekend Visit. I think you put a link up to it. Yes. What you need to know about this piece is that there's three real main characters. There's a character named Trofim, who's a retired Russian spy. And then there's his son, Yevgeny, who's also a spy, but he's like active. And then Yevgeny's girlfriend named Carmen, who is an assassin from Venezuela. So I guess that's all you might need to know. But I think we would benefit from reading along, because I can't do voices very well. Weekend Visit. No matter who is in charge of the Kremlin, Trofim Isolovich Chlorophyll is always alone with his books and papers. Oh, by the way, this is like 3,000 words long, so settle in, I guess. He's entering a cursed phase when he's losing touch with that mental card catalog by which he memorized where a book was in his library. Dreams intersect with reality to conspire in moving books from place to place in his mind or disappearing them altogether. Also nagging Trofim is the old suspicion, never far from the KGB man's mind, that members of Snobnev's cult in the security service are rifling through Trofim's possessions every so often, whenever Trofim leaves his house to go abroad, to go to the market for apples, to go on a half-hour's walk. Trofim used to do it himself all over the globe, mastering someone else's schedule, slipping into that person's home when they were gone, focusing on some paper or piece of information hidden away amongst their belongings. In his KGB days, he used to bring a Polaroid camera to photograph clusters of objects before disturbing them to search for the prize, so that they knew exactly how to reorder the universe before they left again in several hours, minutes, quanta of suspended time. As a kind of mutual, well-earned grace, Trofim lets Snobnev know when he's leaving the area, and Snobnev lets Trofim know he's still under surveillance. Snobnev was a colleague from the old days, but one who stayed closer in his orbit to Moscow and the levers of power than Trofim did. Snobnev gives advice and counsel to Trofim, but Trofim never shakes the feeling that his own doom lays within Snobnev's hands. Trofim's son Yevgeny has dealings with Snobnev, meets with the old man for sometimes quite explicit orders, although on paper, Snobnev is as retired from active life as Trofim is supposed to be, on paper, meaning in falsity, the paper universe is counterfeit. Yevgeny, on what is no doubt a secret mission to meet with Snobnev, comes to Trofim's dacha in Lithuania with his new girlfriend Carmen for the weekend. Snobnev is waiting like a trapdoor spider in Vilnius for a meeting with the boy, Trofim knows. Trofim can sense tension in the environment surrounding Snobnev, tension that his son is implicated in. Something operational is happening that is being kept from Trofim, like an ominous cancer diagnosis kept from an old grandmother the family doesn't want to trouble. The boy shows up with his dull, anonymous SUV and his flashy girlfriend from Uruguay or Colombia. Trofim can't remember. She comes in the door with enough luggage to stay a month on Panetteria. She hugs Trofim with an earthy, knowing embrace as though he were a beloved patriarch at her sister's wedding, although they have only met once before in Spain. More falsity. He can feel in her arms the muscles that must have choked the life out of many people. Through his own investigations, he has discovered things about Carmen Anaranjado, her zigzag of, in his view, sloppy assassinations across the continents. I love your house. It reminds me of my father's, Carmen says in twittering Russian as she stalks around the entryway. Venezuelan, that's it. She's wearing a wine-colored velour tracksuit that probably cost as much as Trofim's car. Thick wedges that announce her with every footstep, a noise Trofim realizes with a sinking feeling he will need to get used to during her stay, a knocking noise throughout the precious silence of his home. Chandelier earrings, a black t-shirt with an anime seductress on it, a Hello Kitty watch, signs of insouciance, a link to the Times, a Louis Vuitton handbag, and a bright blue designer trucker's cap that reads in English, "Deal with it." Her clothes were like the rocks that his ship was meant to dash itself against. She wants to be taken on a tour of his house. Trofim is waiting for Yevgeny to take the lead in this distasteful task. But no, the son stands by and makes the father lead her about and listen to her loud cooing like a dove at every room. They make it to the kitchen where Trofim finally feels like it is appropriate to switch into Spanish. He politely transitions into her language, not revealing that he can't bear the sounds of her voice in Russian. Who cooks for you? Carmen asks, peering around the kitchen, the pots and pans hanging from a frame overhead. I can't believe you do it for yourself. I have someone. So you admit it. He gestures as if giving up a point without betraying any pain, although there is some there that Carmen may detect, maybe trying to pry out, a sharp hole to haunt. Is she your girlfriend? No. You're not married. I was. Yevgeny's mother. She passed away some time ago. I've not married since. You should get married, Carmen says, eyeing him. It's not right for a man to be all alone in a house. I have visitors. I like to be alone. Nonsense. My son visits me and he brings colorful guests. She snorts a little laughter, unbruised. I should cook for you tonight, Carmen says. If that's Yevgeny's plan, I'll make it the plan. I insist. She starts looking through his kitchen and pantry. She's pushy and she owns it. He stands back and watches her. He thinks about the first time he met her. He doesn't know if she remembers. Granada, Spain. Trofim and Yevgeny on vacation. Yevgeny didn't introduce Carmen Anaranjado as anything formal. He never has. Carmen made it a point to melt into the Spanish culture in the presence of the two chlorophyll men, to be a part of the scenery, trying to prove a point that she could blend in anywhere, embody the Spanish sights and sounds like a zealous tour guide putting tourists in their place. But she did not know that Trofim had been all over the world, was a tourist nowhere. Carmen tried to dance the flamenco, tried to enter the performance space at a nightclub where everybody gathered to watch. But Trofim had seen her superior in dancing and sex all over the globe, across the years in many quiet combat zones. The whole globe was a combat zone in Trofim's time. The romance of the KGB man stalking people in Granada, in Rio de Janeiro, in Cairo, collecting agents like Dracula collecting other children of the night spawned by him. Bound by extortion, forgery, blackmail, a host of crimes feeding off the dark hemoglobin of espionage. Granada had been a tug of war in cultures. Carmen claimed it by inserting herself in the flamenco, a field of Latin fire. He, the observer still plays the game, has two hands on the rope, the dancer holds the other end. Machine gun heels, the explosions of energy and defiant grand gestures in a traditional space, only to be undone when Trofim clapped a knowing hand on the shoulder of the resident Spaniard in charge, and they seemed to know each other. Trofim was at ease, and she saw. It undid her because it was her task, her game to show she was more acclimatized. It was a childish, foolish thing, he imagined, like when she must have grabbed the guitar as a little girl and pretended to play, and the cousins ignored her. She hated to be ignored. He could tell, both from Granada and from his kitchen where she sorted through spices that Yulia, the housekeeper, had left there. Yevgeny drifted in, still with his jacket on, didn't offer Carmen a drink. He said he needed to go out for a couple hours, to meet Snobnev, no doubt, in Vilnius, 40 minutes away. Yevgeny might as well not be here. He's so powerless in the face of his girlfriend and his father. He knows she will act out when she dances, when she tries to talk tough, portray herself as a vicious operator. The contest of unspoken evil begins when Yevgeny leaves. Carmen might win because Trofim has lately felt the silhouette of God, if not God, cast upon him. Over coffee or cognac in the living room, she'll break and tell him the stories of murder in Mexico City, trying to impress him. She's never affected policy, though, in the great game. She's a pawn, self-starting though she may be. She's stared into the faces of those she killed. Trofimus watched his evil play out in worse places than that and understood it, like on the front pages of international newspapers. The mysterious drift of events that he has set into motion. Death is beyond revocation. Hers was in close quarters in the back of limousines or in alleys or back rooms, favelas. She's a murderer of men. He's a murderer of the spirit of the times, of history. Evil writ large, yet oozing from secret places. Over a light dinner she put together, sitting at opposite and opposing ends of a long table, he talks about Yevgeny as a boy. What was his brother's name again, she asks. Stanislaw, Trofim says. The food is spicy. Was she trying to subdue him? But he disassociates from the taste buds under fire. He and his brother were always playing games. Yes, Yevgeny is a player. Maybe he takes after his father. It's flirtation, hinting perhaps inexpertly at sex that can never happen. Flirting with other family members seems to be a role she has fastened onto. Her flirtation, a kind of sequence among men, like the tapeworm that turns the stickleback white so it can be visible to predatory birds and eaten, the bird its next intended host. Did Yevgeny have a lot of girlfriends, Carmen asks. No, he was a solitary boy for a long time. Did you ever, Carmen says, she's grinning and scrunching up her shoulders, signifying something salacious. I don't know what you mean, speak up. Did you ever, blushing false, take him somewhere to learn to be a man, like to a prostitutki? Some fathers do that. It happens in Venezuela. Trofim thinks for a second. Yes, there was one time. We were in India. The lady had one leg, but was twice as expensive. You lie. It's true. It is not true. I don't know how he became a man. That's a question for him. What do you take me for, an evil father? An evil gentleman. She drinks from her wine. Do you want to see evil? Do you really want to see something really evil? Of course. He says nothing, just stands up and wipes his lips with a napkin, gestures for her to follow him. She brings her wine glass. She leaves her deal with it hat. They go out the back door towards the white barn that holds his workshop. He looks at her to gauge how ready she is for this. She gives an excited gaze back. Is it some kind of artwork he's working on, a sculpture? They're playing is exactly what she wants. They come into the darkened barn and he turns on the switch. Banks of fluorescent lights come on. They have been positioned over a wide table. Train tracks, model trains. Mischief on her face falls into confusion. In one corner of the table is the Umschlagplatz near the Warsaw Ghetto, where trains are being loaded with people, then to be taken several dozens of not-to-scale miles to the death camp in Sobibor Forest. Little colleges of the Vorlager, with gardens and barracks of Lager 1, and then the barbed wire fences and gun emplacements on top of towers. He has assiduously gathered the tiny figures to be the SS, the Ukrainian guards, and the Jews. Time is frozen. It is a great day. It was a great day, Trofim said. October 14th, 1943, there was an uprising. A Soviet soldier, Perchursky, had been taken prisoner and helped them plan the revolt. That's him there. Trofim points to a tiny man running with hordes of other prisoners across the minefield. Some figures lay broken next to detonating mines, which Trophimus indicated with towers of black cotton and smoke. Petruski helped them plan to kill many of the SS, then they saw their chance and fled. Hundreds escaped the camp but were shot or died at the minefield. Many made it to the forest and some to safety. The figurines of the escaping Jews are running toward where Carmen stands at the edge of the table. She looks out over the whole of the model train setup. At first it was just the trains. I researched heavily. Then I wanted to do the escape for Petruski. She sets down her wine glass on the field the Jews ran across and bends down. At first he thinks to get a closer look, but then, unavoidably, it is her behind pointed at him, that ass in wine-colored velour. She has shed her jacket and is just in the black designer t-shirt, which is riding up and exposing her lumbar area, the dazzling coloration of the skin of the lower back. She's standing, sort of hip shot, and now putting her hands on his model to really lean forward and support herself in that position. A woman who may as well be at a pool table showing her ass to her opponent. It was just part of the texture of the afternoon. Nothing shocking, no threatening secrets to keep from any other figure in the triangle. She looks over her shoulder at him, smiling, turned on. Does the death camp do it for her? Here, time splits. Tributaries of suffering action diverge. Trophime, enraged, yanks down the waist of her pants and underwear and whacks her ass hard with a slightly cupped hand he knows from many prior chastisements would make the loudest pop. Starlings startled from their places in the rafters. She screams as she hugs the table tight, the mystery of pain that she wants to drink, wants to feel the nerves die. He spanks her hard on the same area of her backside, 10 or 12 times until she comes in a ragged shudder with tears ejecting from her eyes, crying out and knocking the fleeing Jews down, squashing them with her upper body, the 200-foot woman like from some old horror movie. Or he doesn't touch her, doesn't spank her, because that is what she wants. She wants to triumph over him by making her deal her out pain. She will control him with an invitation to degrade her on the altar of his train set of the Sobibor death camp. He looks at her and says, "Stand up, stop putting it in my face." She straightens up and turns halfway to look at him like, "What are you talking about, you dirty old man?" "I'm not going to tell you any anecdotes about my son because I don't think you'll be here long." "You love it," Carmen says. He reaches out not to hit her, but to grab her wrist and jerk her away from the table. "You don't shock me," Trophime says. "You're an amateur at this. I'll tell him you made a pass at me." "It won't matter to him. Unlike you and him, he knows me. You don't know us. You don't know anything. I bought him a woman once, remember?" She jerks her arm away from him and rubs the wrist where he'd held her tight. "Let's just try to make it through the weekend," she says. She looks at the wine glass that got spilled in the Schrodinger's commotion, red wine soaking into the old, mossy surface of the field with the escaping Jews now tossed aside. "Your model is sick," she says to him, and goes out the door of the barn into the backyard. He usually gets some variation on that reaction when he shows the model of Sobibor to people, which he very rarely does. It was a test. The Venezuelan assassin failed, and it was most instructive to see her stupid, middle-class morality rear its ugly head after she'd been so clearly turned on by it. The first response is the most real. He goes inside and sees that she's retreated to Yevgeny's room. He supposes a further bifurcation could take place where he seeks her out and torments her, shows her what real psychological torture is, measures the length of her evil against the limb of his own, which he knows from long decades he can put on or take off like any tool. He knows he is good. He's been meaning to talk to his son about the good that he feels pervading him. Wants to tell Yevgeny about the beautiful light so he can leave monsters like this woman behind, as well as his twisted occupation. Trophime sits in his study, surrounded by books, and thinks about suicide bombers, sleeper cells, deep cover, stay-behind agents dissembling before revolutionary courts martial. people holding the good deep inside themselves, showing no trace or knowledge of it even under the most savage torture. The belief system of the deep cover operative infiltrating all enemy territory, even heaven.
Oh my God. Holy shit, that's fucking, it's fucking riveting. Every time you read this, every time you read from this novel, I want to have it in my hands more, right? Like this one, like, it starts off really fucking good. And like I say this every time, but you have such a mastery over the small details. Like the way that she's dressed so perfectly communicates the lie that she's living, right? And it's so obviously calibrated to get a rise out of the person who sees her without like saying anything about her. And but where this piece really turned for me is when he shows her the train set, because I thought I knew where that was going and I did not. And that, like, something about that image, like the concentration camp scale model is so fucking terrifying and so perfect and so perfectly communicates like the divide that you're talking about here between the kind of like superficial evil that you usually see in like spy movies and stuff like that she represents, the kind of like you know, like seductress assassin, or the person who's willing to stab their friend in the back to for the sake of their country or for the sake of the game or whatever, and like the true fucking evil of history. And that contrast, the way you turn the screw, like my eyes popped out of the head when I realized what you were doing is so fucking good. And I really, really want to see this shit done. You know?
I do too. Thank you for your kind words and your looking at it. I just wrote this 2 days ago, and it's not, I guess, totally done, but I'm working on it, and I'm trying to fit all these pieces together and all these different characters and things, and it's definitely something that I spend time composing in my head, but it doesn't really feel like composition. It's hard to, until it's actually real and on the page or on the screen, because I write on my phone. It's really frustrating, but it's definitely a payoff to read it to you all tonight and see.
Yeah, well, that was really amazing. The part with the Sobibor scale model just really hit it home, and the way that segues into the interpersonal stuff, especially the like what William was talking about. You know, the evil, the types of evil thing. You know, it feels almost like a you know, one of those scenes where the Bond villain is showing off some, you know, like toy or something like that.
Right.
And it's really it just the way you segue that into the deeper interpersonal stuff, especially the last paragraph there, where, you know, he talks about you know, that line into even heaven. You know, I mean, that was, man, that last paragraph kills it, and it's just accented by that part which has the model part actually has reminded me of that movie Marlin Call. It's a documentary.
Oh yeah.
But no, that was amazing. Like, my God.
Thanks, Rudy.
Jesse, does this have a title?
Oh, sorry, Blake. Sorry.
The title of the whole book
Yeah.
is called Fear is a Hollow Verb.
Fear is a hollow verb?
Fear is a hollow verb. It's supposed to be a little bit like mocking some spy thrillers from olden days, you know. But
like
it's
the
all,
Bond movie titles, right? Like,
yeah,
yeah. No, that's great.
like a James Bond sort of title, except hollow verb is a weird thing that gets explained in the book more.
I just wanted to double down on what Rudy said about that last paragraph and those last two words, even heaven. I had to type them into the chat. Like what? Oh my God, the fucking even heaven is such a good turn. But anyway, Blake, I feel like I interrupted you twice in a row here, and maybe you wanted to say something. So no, okay, no, Jesse, that fucking kicked ass, and I really want to see the final draft. I want to hold this thing in my hands. I want
Right.
to book.
I just submitted this chunk that I just read tonight to a thin slice of anxiety, and wondering if they'll take it. But
Fingers crossed.
yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. Thank you. Next up is Adam Johnson with some poems. Oh, and also Forrest. Did you want to read tonight? I don't have you on the list, but I can add you if you do. Just put it in the chat, and I will. I'll put you after Adam.
I will. I have a novel. Sure. Yeah, I'll read a little bit. Thank you.
Absolutely. Adam, it's all yours, and I just put the link in the chat.
Okay, thank you. And Jesse, that was awesome. I think that Thin Slice will take that. Truly a pleasure to listen to that. So I just have 3 short pieces there. I'll start. The first one's called Community Work Service. Jim took a piss in an alley outside a bar and got slapped with a fine and some community work service. It was his second conviction, so the judge made him work it off. He signed up for Meals on Wheels. He heard about it somewhere. He decided to do the work along with his old lady. She wanted to come with. She thought it would be good for her too. It would get her out of the apartment. They'd had some roadies, so Jim and Elaine showed up at the church at about 11:30. There was a line of other volunteers. There were about 6 people in front of them. He could hear the lady sitting at the table. She was giving instructions. She was handing things out. She said to one volunteer, he may or may not answer the door in a dress. When it was their turn, the lady in charge gave out a sigh when she saw Elaine. She said to Jim, I recommend that only you go to the door. Jim said, why? The lady said the guy on the route can get aggressive with women. Jim didn't care. Elaine didn't care. What's some old guy with a cat call anyway? So they grabbed the bags of meals. Then Jim got a signature from the lady to prove to his probation officer that he was there. Then they beat it out of the church. The day was bright. It was hot. It was nice. They pulled up in front of the house, the one they were warned about. It was a tiny bungalow with fading paint and a jungle for a yard. They saw a set of eyes peeking out from behind some window blinds. Big, yellow, aching eyes. Then the blinds flashed shut. The eyes were gone. Jim went up to the front door. Elaine stayed in the car. They followed the advice. Then the guy ran out of his house by a different door and kind of came around the side in the nude and fully erect. He leapt onto Jim's car and started dancing on the hood, jumping up and down. Elaine was inside screaming. The window wouldn't go up. The motor was broken. The guy was jerking off on the car and spitting and screaming, saying, this is what you get. He was stomping around and really jerking himself off. The hood was getting dented. Elaine was losing her shit inside. Jim was strategizing on the lawn. He wanted to tackle the guy off, but he didn't want to get hit with dick. It was a real fatty, and it was getting waved all over through the air. Then the guy started to come on the windshield. Elaine tried the wipers. They streaked it all over the glass. They were out of washer fluid. The windshield looked like a Jackson Pollock. Then out of nowhere, the guy jumped from the hood and grabbed up the bag of food on the ground and flew into the house like a bolt goblin, like greased lightning. They heard the door slam. Then they saw the eyes again through the blinds. The guy cracked a window. They could hear his laughter. They could hear him eating and laughing in there. He was getting a real kick out of it. Then Jim started the car up and floored it out of there. He was bitching at Elaine for turning the wipers on, yelling, how can I see through all this shit? It was quite a punishment for merely taking a piss in an alley. This next one's called Shaggits. Reading a crisp, new Leonard Michaels anthology, wondering about Turkish rope, An old saying about not mentioning rope in the house of a man whose son was just hanged. My wife wanted to marry a NJB, nice Jewish boy presumer jerks who order shaving razors through social media ghost companies. I asked my wife if it mattered whether I went to at least 20 bar mitzvahs in the 90s. I told her I can recite the entirety of Mace's Harlem World. She says, "It's all right, kid. You're golden." She has a big heart. Then her boyfriend picks her up in his green Jaguar, and I go back to my stories. Last one's called I Love This Shit. Holiday Inn, throwback, red wine in plastic cups from a screw top bottle advertised as staff's pick. The place smells 80s, 90s ancient. Pool, arcade, sandpaper towels, ping pong table, old bins, carpet, we swim, pool, print, wax, wane. The ping of tokens, yawns. We're tired from the drive, so we call it. Dad's tipping over in the hall. He stumbles, finds key, fades. In the room, he's crumbling, but he hits wine. Second wins himself. He showers, pulls curtain, stares. He finds a hidden camera in the bathroom. It is up in the ceiling fan, but he's too drunk and melancholic, so he just starts dancing for it. A week later, he gets into his cups. He gets cross at the memory of it all, calls the hotel, complains, fits. They check the room. The camera is gone. Dad throws a tantrum on the phone, drives the 3 hours, swears oaths, wants to see the room. They oblige. He tears the room apart. He is savage. He is impaired. He chokes out a staff member up against a mirror, the one who got sarcastic on him. Now Dad is in jail for the weekend. Dad swears it was all justified. He asks us to put money on his books. He's whiny on his collect calls. There's background noise from the other inmates. He's hurried, short. He wants money for the commissary. He wants a chocolate bar. He doesn't say, "I love you." That's it.
Holy shit, that last line of the last poem, he doesn't say, "I love you." Oh my God. So we've accepted the first poem that you read for publication. So I've talked to you about it before, but this is like one of your funniest fucking poems. Some of the details, I love the wipers. I love that she turns on the wipers and it's so hilariously disastrous. And then the fact that you return to the detail of the wipers, which was already hilarious later. And there's just so much about like how that poem is structured and just the wonderful absurdity of it. And it also hits close to home for me personally, because I worked for 8 years for a nonprofit, a senior focused nonprofit, a kind of Meals for Wheels-esque nonprofit. And we often had to tell our volunteers like, oh, or no, like exactly what happened, not like what happens here is absurd and nothing quite like it has happened to us, but that like, oh no, don't match that client with a female volunteer thing happens so many fucking times with so many different clients. And I don't know that. And the way the final poem here escalates is fucking hilarious too. And that last line, that he didn't say "I love you" line, is so unnerving. It's so vicious after what happens before. It's just another great set of poems, Adam.
Thanks, William. Thanks, you all.
Thank you.
You know, one thing that I really like about the last poem, it has this feeling of like, and this goes for a lot of your prose and poetry and stuff like that, but it feels kind of like reverse interactive fiction. It's weird, like the way like this you use line and stuff, like you have like the way it almost feel like it's describing the environment. So pool, arcade, sandpaper towels, but then it goes into things that like Dad is tipping over the hall, he stumbles, finds key, fades. Like it reads, the way it's like it's staccato like that is almost like putting in commands to interactive fiction, and it's really, really powerful when you read it, because it feels like doing an act, basically like doing something. And it's really like, I don't really know how to describe it, but all your poetry has that kind of vibe to it. It's really cool.
Thanks a lot, Rudy. I really appreciate that.
The ending with chocolate and no love was brilliant. That was brilliant.
Thanks, Blake.
Yeah, thanks so much, Adam. And Rudy, I never thought of it that way, but that way that like how it's almost like a text adventure game. That hadn't occurred to me. And that really reinforces the like 90s vibes that a lot of your poems have. So
Yeah.
next up is, I guess, we're going to do Forrest next. And if anyone has a piece they'd like to read after Forrest, just put it in the chat. I believe Rudy has something to share too, but we'll do the quasi open mic thing first.
Okay, thanks, guys. I am going to read a piece of a novel that I've been struggling with for like a decade. And I'm going to just kind of break the fourth wall and tell you why it's been so difficult for me. When I first started writing, trying to write professionally, I wrote smut on Craigslist, and like I published the story in Hustler. I also was doing like celebrity interviews and so on, but I was making a little bit of money doing these things. And I wound up writing, like posting an ad, and somebody responded who's a very powerful politician and businessman. This is true. This is true. And so I had correspondence with this man for several years because he wanted me to write stories. He thought I was a woman. I called myself Valerie. And he wanted me to write stories basically about him fucking his daughter. And so I was like, I really wanted, like, I just wanted to tell the whole world about it, you know. But it was also during the time of like Elliot Spitzer and Anthony Weiner and then Trump, and the whole thing's like a little boring. I'm like they sell to the New York Post or something like that. So trying to figure out how to write the novel, it took me so long to figure out that I can't do it from my own perspective because I'm not Valerie. And like also the trans, like cultural war stuff got very strange. So I you know, like it became this person that I think that I could have become, which is sort of a mediocre state-employed grief counselor, like social work school or PhD. And so and he's the father. He's my father, basically, and Jules is threatening. He wants the story killed. And so Glenn, the grief counselor, is writing to Jules, and basically I'll just read I'll read a few paragraphs from the beginning, and then, you know, it gets funny in parts, and maybe I'll share it with you in the weeks to come. But so, dear Jules, you don't know me. I am not Valerie Ann Blackwell. I am writing to you from her email account, surreptitiously, because I think this method of contact will be safest for all of us. I will introduce myself only as Mr. Blackwell, although that is not the name I use in my day-to-day life any more than Jules is yours. You should think of me only as Blackwell, and if all goes well for both of us, you will never know me by any other name. I write to you today regarding an ill-begotten legal matter that has become, from my humiliating perspective, far too far out of hand. With the advice of select legal counsel and as the traditional head of my unfortunate family, I have decided to quell these matters with what follows in the hopes that I may shield my family as well as yours from any further discomfort. Although you don't know me, I know you better than you would like to imagine. This disparity in our mutual familiarity with one another is likely to create a discordance in our relationship. But I hope this is an inequality you choose to accept. Yes, I know you primarily through your email exchanges with this so-called Valerie. And after spending some time rummaging through her supposed inbox, I know you in a way that I imagine is causing your stomach to turn. But perhaps more troubling is that we both realize the information that came into my possession when I gained access to Valerie's email account could do a great deal of damage to both your private and public life. Let me be clear in saying, I never intended to be in this position, and furthermore, I am absolutely hoping to avoid the harm that can inflict upon you. We both can imagine that how, in the wrong hands, The information contained within Valerie's emails could bring great tragedy to your family, your career, and perhaps your entire political party. Indeed, it seems that you and I have both come to believe that information contained in your emails exchanged with Valerie has come to hands, my sons, that very well may attempt to inflict harm. And furthermore, a sort of harm that evidently would elicit the retaliations upon me and my family in one form or another. Well, once again, as it often is with my family and in my profession, I might add, I am put in a position where I must intervene and arbitrate a childless conflict between two difficult individuals. I'm not sure what it is about me, because often it feels like I am both in private and professional life, intending for the betterment of quote unquote society, attempting to find some middle ground between two opposing parties. This almost habitual practice has done little to advance any of my rather humble list of achievements that I had once wished to accomplish before my own sure to be little noticed deaths. But I have done the calculation. I've consulted multiple lawyers, and as it turns out, even in the event that my entire immediate family were to suddenly somehow vanish, die, disappear, on second thought, my first child, my true daughter, obviously not your so-called Valerie, because unlike my son, my daughter has managed to make a living for herself in a location very far away from where either you or I reside, despite her mother's, my wife's, unceasing pleas for her to be closer to home. And in any case, my daughter aside, concerning the family members who are dependent upon my breadwinning, my wife and my son, even if they were to suddenly die or not be financially dependent upon me for whatever reason, death being the only reason that comes to mind, in the event that the little matter addressed in the following writing should reach the courts, chances are I would be so thoroughly drained of resources, so utterly humiliated by what would become of the scandal in the media, that it appears it would be impossible for me to go on according to the standards that I deem a life worth living. Although my occupation does not require the approval from the voting public as yours does, Jules, as a mental health practitioner, my employment by the state, which I have worked for the majority of my life to obtain since the beginning of my path to earning a doctorate in psychology, my standing with the public, to whom I appear first and foremost on the parody that is the internet, is nonetheless of utmost importance. No one wants to see photographs of their state-appointed grief counselor assisting his mutated son through a court battle against a man with the type of divisive media spectacle that has been bestowed upon your life. And so it is in both our interests to settle this matter my way, as I intend to do it now, in the anonymous form that has become of this hastily manufactured manuscript, protected by copyright and published in public view in some fashion, but quite out of the way. Even though I don't feel particularly drawn to literature outside my field these days, it does feel something akin to catharsis to be writing now. Perhaps like those listless, impotent men driven to the edge of sanity by sadness, who are energized by finding solace in the resolution to commit suicide, I have found the energy to type tirelessly for weeks on end during my annual August break, which this time around has brought a serendipitous solitude. The reason that I write today is quite simple. I am attempting to pry the salacious slices of your person that you shared with this so-called Valerie from the very hands that could ruin your family as well as mine. These hands are in fact that of my son. In case you have not inferred it by what I have thus far shared, this Valerie, the one with whom you exchanged many supposedly tantalizing emails and who brought your incestuous fantasies to life, and her dirty stories, with whom you have met in person on at least one occasion before she became catatonic and ceased existing, was in fact my son. Sorry if this is disappointing to you, Jules, but you won't be hearing or seeing the so-called Valerie anymore. Valerie has vanished. My son will no longer be able to conjure her with slutty prose or feminine accoutrements. You will never truly know Valerie, because you will never find my son, nor hopefully will want to after my son's trite art project that is endangering us all is laid to rest by what follows. Despite what your hired goons who call themselves lawyers tried to put forth in their email to Valerie's account under the heading cease and desist, when they laid claim to be working with so-called top-tier hackers to discover an IP address that would link the email account in question to a physical address where my son resides, my present address, I know full well that no one until now has emailed you with the email account ValerieAnnBlackwell@gmail.com from my home address, and that at this time I use this email account cloaked under advice of the select legal counsel with what is known as a virtual private network, so that if hackers were to locate us through the digital gobbledygook, my home address will appear to be humorously enough in the same city as yours. I know full well that no one has written from my family's physical address, because my son was never anywhere near my home when he was writing you from this email account. If he was writing to you now, which is highly improbable, it would be from the state hospital, which is filled with mutants, much like himself, and he would never be able to pick him out of a bunch, even if you could guess which hospital or even which state that hospital is located. Your Valerie, my son, who was taken away by the police 3 weeks ago when he allegedly became a danger to himself and others. Indeed, it was I who called the state police saying as much. And the days leading up to my summoning of the police, my son had lain motionless and silent, drooling on himself, hardly showing any sign of life more than urinating in jars that his mother's found in the closet of his basement room after he left with the police. I'm not trying to imply that you are somehow responsible for his decline, but my son had seemingly become fixated on a work of art he was trying to construct based on his fraudulent love affair with you. And as is evidenced by the so-called cease and desist email you sent, this is a work of art, which you are also aware. It seems that you and I have both inferred that blackmail was implied by Valerie's abbreviated final message, to which reads, Jules, I am writing to let you know what I am planning to use the attached file for work of art that will be displayed in a public setting. If you would like to suggest a counter proposal, sorry, I am all ears. Attached to this email is a media file that contains not only selections of love letters the two of you exchanged, but several photographs of the so-called Valerie, my son, videos that my son had taken of himself done up as Valerie in various settings. Some of these videos depicting this Valerie reading your emails in a particularly humiliating faux feminine tone, artistic renderings of your headshots, videos, and other publicly available visual representations of you, and of course, a shaky video depicting you and my son interlocked in the most debased and debauched behavior that I could ever dream up for him. I gotta stop there.
Holy shit. So, first of all, this is an incredible premise. And I don't care to what degree it's factual or not. This is an incredible fucking premise. But your execution here is so, and I say this as a compliment, so fucking mean. And I love it. To be writing in like your dad's voice, and to be writing that way, like about you and all the details here, and like the word choice, like the repeated use of the word mutant, and it's like such, like, for me anyway, it's like such a perfect encapsulation of like how I imagine my dad thinking about me as a weird like outsider artist type who's not bringing in any income, not doing anything. Like, I don't know, it just seems like it's like such a it so perfectly captures the angst of like that intergenerational angst and contempt. And there's just so much good here. I fucking love it, man. I love it. And I hope you'll read more, and I hope you'll write more.
Yeah, I have a lot, but a lot of it's crap, and I figured it out, and I will bring the funnier parts. I think it's very repetitive, and it's like a monologue. But we find out Glenn is very actually, he's just bitter because he's kind of jealous that he didn't do something. You know, it's really like I think we're getting. But yeah, oh, thank you.
The repetition is hypnotic, Forrest. I mean, the repetition in there is really. I mean, I feel like I was being sedated as well. You know.
Yeah, I wanna hammer also on the repetition, because it's like the way you use asides and stuff like that. Like you're talking about one thing, and then just it becomes an aside, it becomes another aside. It is really pretty awesome.
Cool. Thanks.
It's great, and I hope you'll. Now you had to stay up really late to make this, right? Like
It's 4 a.m.
Damn.
It's 4, yeah. But I got nothing else going on. I'm serious. Like, I mean, I do, but you know, I'm trying to find some work writing, but there's like, I'm in a strange country where I don't speak the language, and this is like, my writing is American English, and I don't really want to get involved with other people. It's a little frustrating, but it's, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not in a foreign country right now, but I still know that feeling, you know?
There isn't an expat community there that you can hook up with, or
Yeah, you know, there probably is. You know more about it than I do. Everything's so crazy right now because, I mean, people are throwing over police cars in Rotterdam tonight because of the mask mandate, which is culturally ass backwards from like the US, because they're kind of leftist, you know. It's like they don't. It's a confusing time for a lot of that. I tried to make some friends, but they were like into techno music, and I don't know. Like, yeah, but you're right. I mean, I would like to find some writers. I'm getting into Dutch literature, which is a weird niche. Yeah.
Well, I have a friend from Belgium who I'll ask him, because he goes around there. I'll see if there's any groups.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, I want to keep doing this. I don't mind that. I like the nighttime schedule, but write me if you hear about it, and come visit. Also, you guys are welcome.
Yeah, I was gonna say, worst case scenario, you can always stay up till 4 a.m. and hang with us, because I want to hear more of this novel. But
yeah, it keeps getting funnier and funnier. So please. I'm laughing a lot and nobody else knows. So please, I'll be back.
Thank you so much, Forrest.
That's great.
Unity has a poem to share with us, I think. And after Unity, if anyone has anything else they want to read, put it in the chat. If not, we'll go to Rudy and then we'll wrap it up.
Oh yeah, this is just like a little bitchy poem that I wrote. I think it's not very good. Oops, how do I get it? Hang on, I'm gonna send a link. Okay. It's called Terrible Boyfriend. My sister got back with her terrible boyfriend. He just talks and talks. He's like a walking hostage situation. Blah, 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 he says, while she just sits there quietly. I can't imagine wanting that, but I bet she doesn't want it either. She probably doesn't notice it. She wants something else, some fantasy of romance she thinks I'll come to provide, and puts up with his shit in the meantime while she waits for the fantasy to die. Is that all love is? Waiting for reality to catch up to the fantasy while hoping against hope it never does? or that against all odds, some better reality emerges. Like maybe he'll die before I realize my error. Or maybe I will. Or maybe he'll change into someone rich and handsome and fun. Or maybe my secret grandma is a queen, like in Princess Diaries, and I'm a special princess, the princess of Europe. Ugh. Life is temporary, but it feels like forever. The terrible boyfriend's parents shipped him off to Portland, by the way, all the way across the country, as far away as they could get him. Hopefully, that means he won't be visiting anytime soon. Maybe they'll break up again before it happens. That sounds so rude, lol. But really, I just want everyone to be happy. Okay, that's it.
This actually really struck a nerve with me. And it isn't like so much the boyfriend stuff as it is the waiting for the fantasy to catch up to reality, waiting for the fantasy to die stuff. And I don't know what it is. Like, I'm really at a moment in my life, whether it's in like my writing or whatever, like I'm feeling that really powerfully, like that sense of like anticipating the end of the fantasy, right? That sense of, oh my God, like, what if like life is mostly just waiting for all of these like romantic notions you have to evaporate and to just be left with like crass reality and just be like, well, shit, I guess this is what I have, you know? And I think this captures it really well. And the use of the bad boyfriend as like the linchpin that holds the whole thing together, I think it's very clever.
Thanks. You have to keep coming up with new fantasies. And like and never catch up. You can't like as soon as one of them starts to catch up to you, you have to come up with a new one.
That is so literally true for me that I can't even like articulate like
No, that was very fucking good. And I just really like well written too, very like precisely written, perfectly. Like once again, it really caught me where I'm at right at this moment. I want to check the chat really quick because I want to make sure. Rudy, do you see, has anyone else said they had a piece they wanted to read?
I didn't see anybody. Unity was the last one I saw, but if anybody wants to do anything, wants to get in here, definitely.
I think it's all you, Rudy. And I noticed you didn't even put a link in the document, so I have no fucking idea what you're about to do, and I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so I have a couple of things I could do here. One is my progress, my rather shoddy progress from my NaNoWriMo, which I attempted this year for some fucking reason, even though I hate NaNoWriMo and think it's fucking stupid. But I'll probably do that one since I think it's a little easier to.
Do it. I want to read from your NaNoWriMo because I think you posted an excerpt from it in like the personal Discord, and it was during the week where I was so depressed that I was catatonic, and I want to see this thing.
Yeah, I think that excerpt that I posted is pretty much the only progress I made. Really, I haven't really made much. But before I post it, I should explain a little context here. Basically, this website that I made is a website. When I was making this, and when I make anything, I was really frustrated with like systems of leaving feedback on certain other sites like itch.io. I know is one that we use to display our games and stuff like that, and how like everything is based around like numbers and like star power. So like you give it 5 stars, you get 1 star or whatever. So I wanted to make a more I guess not sympathetic, I guess, but more emotions focused method of leaving feedback. So basically I created this site here, which I'll link to. And on this site, you can this shouldn't run on it should load up on cell phones. I'm not 100% sure though if it will or not. I wouldn't try it on your netbook, William. because it may be too much for the beast. But I'll.
Man, why don't you screen share and show us?
Oh, that's a good idea. Actually, that's a great idea. Okay, so I'm gonna screen share now. Okay, so this is the website, and you just get this out of the way. So on the bottom right hand corner here is this little doll thing, and basically, if you notice, you can highlight parts of the story, which I'll get to in a second. You highlight text on the page, it'll show up here, and you can paint something on the little doll. I don't know, paint like little hair or whatever you want to paint. You can paint a penis on it if you want to. That's what I'm going to do. And then you can send that as feedback, and it'll actually show up down here. So I'll get to see it, or whoever will get to see it. So yeah, basically it's just a way of like, okay, so like this part of the the piece or whatever made me feel like this. And then you draw it on the doll. That's kind of what I wanted to go for. I want to go for something a little more emotions focused as far as feedback, because I don't think that there's a lot of use in the Goodreads style star system. Basically, I mean, that kind of, or itch.io or any of the marketplace. It's kind of focused on marketing and that kind of stuff, which I understand. But for a lot of people, and from myself, I think it might be a little more useful for me personally, I guess. Just the kind of emotional, like what emotions that make you feel, that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff I deal in. So, but anyway, these are two short pieces. The premise here is that a platoon of child soldiers on somewhere that might be Earth or might not be, they hack into a Lich's Spotify premium account to get access to those sweet tunes, and they wind up getting cursed because of this, because of their hacking, and they're cursed to kind of live through the songs on her playlist. They kind of infect their lives. So that's the basic premise of it. As you can see, it's a link to my playlist, my Spotify playlist. So yeah, I'll just read the first one here. This first one, it's based on the song I Want to Be in the Cavalry by Cora Blund, which is one of my favorite songs. November 1st, Simps pound drums in my head. Simps going ba ba ba, ba da 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 da. Simps going 1 2 3, 1 2 3 4 5 6. I don't want to say, I don't want to be here. No. That rhythm is wrong, and that's what I say in my head as he goes upside it. He also inside my head. He marching next to me but outside the line. He is the commander. I am cavalry. There's me, but there's also we. We is 11 soldiers and the commander, Josh. I don't count. I know it's 11 people altogether because 11 is 2 more than all the fingers I have, and also the number that comes before Josh's number of years total. Our cavalry is fierce. We ride no horses or jeeps. We ride in heads, which ride shoulders, which ride torsos and lower body portions. It's a little like Voltron, boy and girl powered cavalry. Heads are the best kind of jeep because they are never running out of fuel. Anything can fit into a head too. Josh is bigger than me and fits comfortably inside my head. There are other places he cannot fit, but the head is vast, like I said. I have memories also in my head of cavalry engagements on an open field where we do best against those without vehicles, of graves where there are as many bodies shot up with 762, which is a special number that counts you instead of you counting it, of Josh not fitting into places. Ouch. Memories are like fuel for a car, but high octane performance fuel. The big one, the great commander who fits all of us, even Josh, inside her head, says that memories are the most dangerous thing that can fit into heads. They are what drives cavalry doctrine, which I guess is what the cavalry does when it's malingering. Malingering is the feeling you get when you miss Ma, but you also shot her through the head and spilled all of her memories onto the ground. It makes you go to the doctor. The doctor slaps you and says, "Get back to the front. You're a soldier, remember?" Memories burn hot as diesel, but we can't really use memories to burn our own shit. For that, we use regular diesel. Lately, there are a lot of bagpipes in my head, drums as well, banjos. Lately, I'm wondering what it would be like to be in another head. Lately, I'm considering volunteering to clean mines, but that is simp work. Simps volunteer. I have never volunteered for anything. The next one is called "I Was in Your Wet Dream." And the song this one is based on, which both of these songs are on my playlist, it's from Wet Leg. It's called "Wet Dream." November 2nd. In my dreams, I am always writing apologies to the big one. My apologies say, "Sorry, we were stealing your Spotify premium account. Please release us from this curse. Signed, we." My apologies are a combination of angles that speak for me when I am looking right at them, similar to a UNICEF worker. Their speaking helps. I don't understand writing. The big one is in my dreams, but it's only her up to the knee. Muppet Babies. And this makes dream sense, but not waking sense, because we carry her portrait into the towns we overtake. I am much smaller than the big one, which makes real sense, but not dream sense, because the dream is mine and everything in it should also be me, not we. Anyway, the big one is wearing her boots when the dream begins, but takes them off. Her socks are striped, not dark like they should be. Her robes are at knee height, higher than they should be. When she removes her socks in the dream, her skin is tan and on her bones, tanner and oner than it should be. Her feet smell, but not like cadaverine. The dream is displaced. My family is seas rise, and now we're driving a car. The big one's talking, depressing pedals with bare feet, or maybe sandals, can't tell. I lean over to tell. I write, "Sorry. I want to tell. It was Anne. Anne wanted us to steal it. Anne's hack tool. Anne's dumbass. Anne's dirty jeans for some reason." The dream is water in a cauldron. The world is red flags unfurl. And the big one is saying, "It needs more cilantro." I'm awake on my back. There's a smell like cilantro taste when I pull my pants or my hand from my jorts. And that's it. Those are the only two stories I have. I finished for the NaNoWriMo. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Man, you should have written more. I love the voice that you created for this. As usual with your writing, there's like a lot of really great punning and wordplay going on here, but this is like a really sad story. It's like sad in a way that I don't usually expect your writing to be sad, right? Like, yeah, it's really funny and really like really nasty and really horrifying and really ingenious. I love the like hijacking the Lich's Spotify playlist, but these are also like really bleak, sad stories, and I dig that, and I want to see where you're going with this. And there's still time left in November. There's like 11 days.
Oh yeah. Well, thanks.
That sounded like no fucking way. That's what I heard.
Yeah, no, I probably will write more. I want to release like maybe 11 or 12 or so.
That's interesting that you talk about bleak and everything. I was so caught up in the imagery of a cavalry in the head and that whole thing that it was. I didn't think about it bleak. It was so fantastic and so real. That's such a creative. That in particular just blew me away. That's such a creative riff, Rudy. That's fantastic.
Well, thanks, Blake. I was kind of inspired by Idris Elba. Some of the things he said in Beast of No Nation. That movie really did it for me. It's whenever I think about child soldier stuff, that's my go-to like inspiration and stuff. And also like there's this book like. Yeah, P.W. Singer has a book. He's like this Brookings Institute guy that wrote this book about child soldiers and shit. And like, he has this quote. I think it's like, child soldier, like a warlord can have at their disposal an entire Napoleonic regiment, you know, basically like he's trying to say like that's like powerful or whatever. But you think like it's a weird quote because it's like really like, you know, it's kind of condescending at the same time as it is like, well, hey, that's where like Napoleonic soldiers fire like, you know, muskets and shit.
Right,
You know?
right.
But he's talking about that as if it has tactical value, and it does, I guess. But I mean, you know, yeah, it's just a really interesting book, and that's kind of where I got a lot of the information.
Yeah, I hope you should write 2 more for next week and read them next week. I mean, I guess that wouldn't quite put you might have to write 3 or 4 to be on pace to get to 12 by the end of the month, but you should absolutely do it.
Nice, yeah. I want to get some more out because I want to test this system I have here, it's all based on shit on my playlist, so I want to just do what I can do. So.
Also, that Carl Blum song is so fucking good. It's so fucking good.
Yeah, it is.
The album is so good. Anyway, thank you, Rudy. And I think, like, last call here to read. I think it's 10 o'clock, so I'm probably gonna, unless somebody really has a piece that they really want to read, I'm probably gonna call it a night for the reading portion here anyway. I'm looking at the chat. Nobody's saying they want to read. Okay, I think we're gonna end it there. This has been Misery Loves Company. This is a weekly reading series hosted by Misery Tourism. We do this every Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. If you'd like to join in, we tweet out the link, you know, around 15 minutes or so before the reading starts. And our Twitter account is @MiseryTourism. Okay, thank you so much. And thank you everyone who read. Definitely, this has been great. It's good to be back at this shit. And Rudy, you can end it. We're good. We're good.